And hello, everybody. Welcome along. Cricket Badger podcast, along with the Garavayan YouTube channel as well. Happy New Year to you all out there. Hopefully, you've all had a very good Christmas and it's starting to have a very happy New Year. It's James and it's Lucas with you as often on this pod. And obviously, with the events in Sydney over the last few days, predominantly talking about Australia getting the Border Gavaskar Trophy and taking it out of Indians' hands. And Lucas, a happy bunny, I guess.
Happy New Year to you, the cricket badgers out there. And a very happy New Year to me. What a start to 2025 for me. We're getting the Border Gavaskar Trophy, which we haven't had for 10 years. So I think 2025 is starting very well, James.
I've enjoyed the series. What interested me was the pitches that were prepared for it, because Australia went toe to toe on basically on seaming bowling tracks, didn't they? There weren't, obviously we didn't get many tests going the distance. Bowlers were in the ascendancy. We saw with, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, Jasprit Bumrah predominantly, but Scotty Bowen coming in as well, taking loads and loads of wickets and really ruling the roost. It was a tough series for the batters, but the bowlers were getting the ball to do a bit of talking, weren't they?
Yeah, and it was predetermined. Pat Cummins came out months before the series, something like in July, August. He did a new promoting his drink, a new drink, and he was saying, he'd love more green top pitches, because the last couple of years, we've been serving flat wickets to India, and I think Pat Cummins and Andrew McDonald and the analysts have decided that maybe we should just go with green tops. So that was an SOS, and they got it all 5 tests. I think the pitch was barring Melbourne. I think that's what they got. They got green top pitches, and I think not all tests went 5 days. Probably disappointing, but at that point they just wanted that trophy back, and they asked for those pitches, and they got them, and they won the trophy. So it was a gamble that worked.
It's interesting, isn't it, though? Because, Bumrah's, I think, the best bowler in the world right now. And he was loving it on those surfaces. So you kind of almost giving the opposition what they want as well, to a degree. So, obviously Australia have got a battery of fast bowlers, whereas India, once you get past Bumrah, as we saw last night, really, on the final day, is a shame, actually, wasn't it, that Bumrah wasn't there on that final day, because I reckon that would have been a really interesting, because Bumrah is head and shoulders above everybody else in that Indian bowling lineup. If he was there with that new ball, it might have been a different story that final day. So we were robbed of that drama, because I think it could have been nip and tuck throughout. Obviously, Australia got home by 6 wickets in the end, but Bumrah 32 wickets in the series, player of the series in a losing cause, which is, you don't often get that. But obviously missing out on that last day, which a few Aussies would have breathed a sigh of relief, I guess.
Well, it's a what if scenario, isn't it? It's what if Jasprit Bumrah, bowled in that 4th innings. I had, when Australia, when Bumrah wasn't going to come out, I had Australia slight favourites. If Bumrah was able to bowl to his capacity, keyword capacity, India probably would have been slight favourites. The batsman that really benefited from that was Khawaja. Khawaja was a walking wicket this series. No Bumrah, and he looked like a world beater again. So Khawaja really benefit from that. But it was tricky at periods, because you think, Australia have got this and wicket would fall out of nowhere. But it's a shame that Bumrah was not able to bowl, because the series he was looking at breaking all sorts of records. He was probably going to break the Mitchell Johnson record that he had, that ridiculous Ashes, where he took 37 wickets. This is a best of 5 test match. Shane Warne, he took 40 wickets in the 2005 Ashes series. So he was going to probably break all kinds of records. Jasprit Bumrah already has this series, but there is some talk that he shouldn't have got it. Should have went to either Starc or Cummins or Boland. Disagree with that. You had to give it to Jasprit Bumrah. Without Jasprit Bumrah, this could have been 5-0 Australia very easily, and this would have been competitive.
He's just immense, isn't he? Because there were times in this series where he was getting the ball to talk. He came off. The other bowlers looked a bit more ordinary, a bit more normal, a bit more human. And then he brought himself back on, and the ball that wasn't doing anything suddenly started doing stuff again. He just seemed to be able to get a little bit more out of that bowling than anybody else, I think, in the entire series. I mean, obviously, Aussies have got some very good bowlers, but Bumrah was leading the way there. And as it says on the screen there, 32 wickets, player of the series, and very well deserved that. And like I say, I think if he'd been present on that final day, other than coming in and getting a duck, then it could have been an all-time classic test, because that could have been nip and tuck all the way through to that final run. But even when the fourth wicket fell, it was not cut and dry by any means. If they'd gone bang bang very quickly after that, India could quite easily have won that test. And I thought you've talked about him a lot on here. Bo Webster came in and really just steadied the ship and took it home, didn't he?
Oh, I thought Bo Webster was absolutely fantastic this Test match. He did what an all-rounder is supposed to do: bowl your overs, make some runs. Picked up his first test wicket. Arguably should have got a second one with that drop from Steve Smith. He was fantastic with a bat. He has the ability to counter a punch. That's what he does for Tasmania. He's used to those conditions as well. Being in Tasmania, they produce green tops over there. But he's a guy that likes to counter punch, that just doesn't like to be bobbed down by an attack. And in both innings, he does that very well. He chases very well. There's an innings in India against India A where he made a 40-odd chasing, and he did it again today. So a lot of pressure was on him. That's his first Test match. The pressure, India were on a roll. You come 4 down with 80 runs remaining. That's a lot of pressure, and it looked like he played 50, 60 tests. It just didn't bother him one little bit, and that was great to see. A breath of fresh air with the all-rounder spot. Just fantastic debut by Webster.
Yeah, I mean, if he nicked off early in that innings, it would have been it could have been a completely different story, couldn't it? So kudos to him. Scotty Boland, though, he's Australia's Chris Woakes, isn't he? I was saying to you on the chats last night, if you look, I mean, he hasn't played many tests away from home, only 4, I think, but he's averaging something like, was it 54, 57 or something with the ball away from home? And he's averaging 12 with the ball in Australia, which is just ridiculous. 10 for 76, the match figures for Scotty Boland, player of the match at the SCG. And they show that graphic on the screen, don't they, where they put like a little patch which is the size of a handkerchief or a small tea towel, and he's basically hitting the same part of the track every single time. The ball's just nipping around off that same kind of destination point, and he's just metronomically consistent. He's he seems to be quite a very understated kind of fellow. He just gets on with his work. When he's interviewed, he's fairly monosyllabic and quiet, but he's a brilliant bowler.
Yeah, his personality type, it's hard for someone to get anything out of him. And I think Isha Gul was probably the most he was going to get out of Scott Boland. Very shy, very timid guy, sticks to himself. You don't really hear anything about him in the off season compared to other batsmen or bowlers or players. Sorry, mind you, just very shy, just does his own thing. But with his bowling, he's got over 55 Test wickets in the average of 17. We talk about Bumrah having an average of 18. He's like, Boland's got 17. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. What I noticed with Scott Boland this series was his pace. He was bowling quicker than I've ever seen Scott Boland bowl. Usually he's 130, 135 Ks. He was getting up to 140. So, and especially in Sydney day one, he was bowling the high 130s. Not just the odd ball here and there, but a whole spell. That really took me by surprise. So I don't know if that's something he's been working on. But when you're seeing it all over the place, James, on those pitches, it doesn't really matter what speed you bowl. But I noticed that heavily with Boland. He bowls. There was a perception that Boland should start over Hazelwood. And in previous start of the series, Hazelwood's going back to being that number one guy. If Hazelwood wasn't injured, I don't think Boland would have played any Test matches. Maybe Melbourne, going by reputation. But now I think that's changed now, James. There's now a perception that, okay, on green top pitches, Boland is so much better than Hazelwood. If Australia are going to make these kind of pitches, and I hope England are watching, because I think that's what England are going to get. They're going to get the same thing, James.
England will love it. I was thinking about this last night, because where England have struggled in Australia is where it's been fast and bouncy, which England batters aren't used to. where it's been like 600 plays, 550. England have a habit of being, well, even more so under the Bazball regime, of going out there and cracking a quick 350, but not necessarily getting huge first innings totals. I think if you give England green tops, they will fancy their chances big time. I think Australia got to be very careful with that.
Yeah, I think what we've seen, I think Australia, I don't see any. I take your advice on board and I respect it, but green top. We just saw the New Zealand series and they looked unfazed by that. But green tops in New Zealand are completely different to green tops in Australia because they're more harder. New Zealand pitches, we talked about this with Ollie Pope's keeping. They're more softer. They're more the bounce is more lower. In Australia, green top pitches, they're still quick pitches and they're bouncy as well. So that's the one big difference. And I don't see Australia going away from that. And if that's the case,
I agree with you. But I think if you offered any of the England bowlers the pitches that they've just seen against India, or the pitches that England have seen in previous Ashes series, they would snap your hand off at the pitches that have been served up against India.
Yeah, I think Australia played those pitches better than anyone else, in my opinion. Like we saw Steve Smith return to form, Travis said, doing what he does against India. There's been some fails with a couple of other batsmen that I'll get into, which have been disappointing. But I think Australia as a whole, they bat much better on these pitches than anyone else in the world. And I think, with Scott Boland doing what he does, I don't see them going away from green top pitches. And the perception is if you're going to make
England batters against Scott Boland will charge him. They will try and unsettle Scott Boland because, as I say, he lands it on a space on that surface which is pretty predictable. It's very potent, and if you're kind of in defensive mode against it, it's nibbling around, and you've got a lot on your hands. But I could see England in Bazball really kind of batting a long way out the crease, dancing down a little bit, trying to throw him off his game and attacking him. That would be a very interesting battle because he's obviously a very good bowler and will have some success on that basis. But I think England they'll try and take him on. They'll bring a bit of Constance to the party because Constance did that. We'll talk about Sam a bit later, but he was dancing down to the Indian bowlers and hitting them over extra cover and what have you. You'll see Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett trying the same thing against Scott Boland.
Well. Just a quick tip. That's if Zach Crawley is there to do that. I think
Zach Crawley will play even if he gets no runs in between times. They've got him inked in for the Ashes.
I think it hasn't been said much in media. I'm sure these questions will come soon, but I think Stark probably dreams of getting Crawley out first ball. I think he can see that, like he did with Rory Burns. He did it with Jaiswal in the first over of this series in Perth. I think Mitch Stark can see that. Though it hasn't been said publicly, in Mitchell Stark's first overs, just ridiculous how many times he gets out batsmen. I can see Mitchell Stark, seriously him thinking about getting out Zach Crawley first ball, putting a lot of pressure on. If you remember the Ashes series, James, Zach Crawley was actually one that belted Stark first ball through the covers. So I think Stark, he's got a long memory, Mitchell Stark. He remembers a lot of things for a fast bowler, which is strange because they have the perception of being dumb and stupid. But I think Stark might return that favour. I might think, well, you got me in the England. Well, here's my chance to get him back first ball.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. Obviously, we're scooting on and forgetting the Border Gavaskar Trophy by talking about the Ashes, but it's hard to ignore because it's going to be really exciting. I think the Ashes next winter, and if the pitches are as we suspect, then it could just be a leveler. I think it could bring England into the party. Anyway, I should say thank you very much to Manscaped.com for their support of the Cricket Badger podcast. Here's a little bit about what they do. You can get yourself 20% off and free shipping if you quote Badger when you visit Manscaped.com.
Forever you and me, right by my side, where you ought to be. Let me hear you now.
As always, thank you very much to manscaped.com for their support of the Cricket Badger podcast. They're very much appreciated. Back to the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Mentioned Sam Constas before we took that little break, and he's been somebody who has been exciting to watch. There's never a dull moment when he's involved. He has been somebody that when he first, I was really looking forward to seeing him play. And I've gone from, I'll be totally honest with this, I've gone from being somebody really looking forward to watching him play and excited about what he could achieve, to being somebody that was tearing my hair out a little bit watching him play and actually getting quite annoyed by his histrionics, because he's not exactly a kind of shrinking violet. He seems to kind of revel in the attention and what have you. But he to me is a better player than what he's shown in this series. Because he's come out and obviously he's played some ramp shots. He's done some things that have been very exciting. But kind of the obvious example, the shot that he got out to last night, which is basically just a hoik across the line, never in control of that in any. He's better than that, isn't he? I mean, surely somebody needs to kind of just take him to one side and say, this is Test cricket. You don't have to be. Have they told him to play like that? Is that something he's brought to it?
Yeah. Before I go into that, I have to check myself, James. I said that's Cawley took Stark first ball in the Ashes was actually Cummins. So my bad with that one. Stark didn't even play that first test. So probably more motivation for Stark. Look, I was completely shocked when Sam Constas came out to play like that. I couldn't believe it. You see it, but you just don't believe it. It didn't do that any of the previous Shield games. He didn't do that any previous of the Indian A games. It was just a total shock with that ramp shot. If you saw cricket for the first time, you think Sam Constas has been around for 10 years, and he's just a white ball merchant. Just unreal. I've never seen a 19-year-old or anyone playing their first match rattle a nation so much as he did to India. Don't you think?
I totally agree with you, but don't you think? I was watching that first innings where he got his 50, and he was leading a bit of a charmed life. There were some incredible shots, but he was also missing, and he played and missed a huge amount. But I got the opinion that, or I was of the opinion that the more the crowds kind of rose to him because they were getting excited, the more he was getting the Indians rattled a little bit. His confidence was just going through the roof, and he was trying things that he probably wouldn't have tried. Because he was suddenly thinking, I can do this. I'm boss in Test cricket. I'm amazing. And he seemed to suddenly start to kind of maybe believe his own hype a little bit, or the hype that he was generating in his head. And he never calmed down from that. He was buzzing all the way through the series. You could see it. And he needed to maybe just settle down. Because I described him rather harshly as a poor man Zach Crawley. Because he was basically just coming out trying to be Zach Crawley, David Warner, when really, as a new boy in the Australian team, he just needed to get his head over the ball and score some runs and get himself embedded into Test cricket. And his average overall in the Test series wasn't great.
Yeah, sorry to not answer your question of if he got told that. I don't think he was told that. But I kind of agree with you with the crowd. Like the more the crowd pumped him up, he was like, "Well, let's go with the punches. Let's go for it."
It was almost like he was showing off, wasn't it?
Yeah, he has a lot of David Warner about him, doesn't it? The flair, the arrogance, which is not a bad thing. And that he was like Superman out there. He could have believed he could have flied. I've never seen that from a player. And in the Shield, he's got a really good defense. He's got a really good technique. I remember I went to a game at the Adelaide Oval where he just destroyed our bowlers. We've got some bowlers, Doggett, who was part of the Australian squad in Adelaide, McAndrew, sorry. He's taken 30 wickets last year with the ball. He was playing really sensible against a good attack. Wes Agar also in there bowling 140. And, his defense was really good. His strike rate, was 50, 55. That's about average. So, and I think in this series, his strike rate was through the roof. Something over 100. So
he averaged 28, Lucas. He got that 60 in the first innings at Melbourne. Then he followed that with an 8 in the second dig.
Yeah.
And then 23 and 22 at SCG. And you're kind of thinking, well, he got into the 20s, so he should have really been in and seeing the ball. But he never gave you the impression he was in.
Yeah. And that's where I agree with you. I think the more the crowd pumped him up, the more they said, well, look at me, I'm on the centre stage, I'm having the time of my life, let's go for it. And I don't mind that for a couple of series, but when you're making low scores, pressure is going to build on you. You can't escape the height for long, because the criticism these days is very harsh, and it can get on you very quickly. So I would like to see him go back to where he was. He's going to a place in 2 weeks' time in Sri Lanka where it's dominated by spin. If he goes with that mentality, he's gonna get one that turn. He's gonna look very silly. So I hope he can play a little bit better with his strike rate, shot selection up there. But as I said, I've never seen anyone do that to Bumrah. I've never seen anyone rile up a nation like he has in his first test.
It felt to me like he played a defensive shot because just to give himself a rest, not because it was the right shot to do, but he played a full defensive because he was just having a break, and then the next one would be a violent smash over extra cover, or he'd try and ramp or something. But there was a lot. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about Bazball and about how Constas has been approaching this series or the last two tests of this series, and I think Bazball, or that whatever we call it, the attacking kind of style of Test cricket these days, a lot of it is, I think, a very good thing. I think it goes off the rails where everything is premeditated, and you are then relying on luck. When you see Ben Duckett at his best, playing at the top of the innings, he's still choosing his shots to attack. He's choosing the balls that he's going to, it's kind of like, if it's in that kind of area, I'm going to crack it through the covers. If it's short of a length outside, I'm going to cut it, blah, 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 blah. And he's got those kind of zones and those shots in his mind. And it is, so there is a lot of thought goes into it. It might not always look like it, but there is a lot of thought goes into the way Harry Brook and Ben Duckett and what have you approach and attacking innings in Test cricket. Whereas with Constas, it looked like once he got going, it was just a shot a ball. I'm gonna basically just flail the bat at it, and it just didn't always look very controlled.
Yeah,
I've seen when the hype started about him coming into the Australian team, I watched quite a few videos of him to see what he was like. Basically, I was interested in him, and there was proper shots, and building a big innings and able to build a big innings. Never looked like he was going to be able to build a big innings doing what he was doing. There's going to be a ball with your name on it coming around the corner if you're playing shots like he is.
Yeah, I think Nathan McSweeney, what happened to him, I think that also played a part of it as well. We saw, who's not an opener, by the way. I think I've said that enough. He was very nervous, especially to Bumrah. And when you're nervous, when you're defending and trying to survive against Bumrah, your name's going to be all over it. I think Sam thought, I can't do that. I can't do that against these guys, because there's been a lot of talk about the in-swinger. He's very vulnerable to the in-swinger, which I think only one. We never know, because it wasn't the in-swinger. I think the in-swinger only got him out once. That was Bumrah. And the rest has been just shots, wild shots. So we never know if he has improved on that. But when McSweeney came in, he was very nervous, very tentative, and I just think Sam, in his mind, said, I can't do that against these guys. I've got to be on the front foot. And as you mentioned, crowds got up, hype's got up, and he's like, wow, I'm a star of the show. I'm gonna make a headline here, and there's no off switch to say stop. And yes, it looked good in the first innings in Melbourne, looked fantastic. But that shot today he made, I thought that was a very poor shot. Yes, he made 20. It's 20 valuable ones in a low scoring chase, but that, as you mentioned, that was a poor shot. That was never be there to hit. I would have liked him to, yeah.
It feels like it's an admission sometimes from a batter when they go all out assault like that, is that I just don't trust how to defend here. I don't trust my game. I'm not good enough, basically, to play Test cricket. You know, if you go back, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that we go back to the 1970s and go along at 2 and over. There are some very good and exciting things about modern Test cricket, and some of the shots that are played are, I mean, it's seriously entertaining. Sam Constance has been entertaining, but it does seem to be like it's an admission that you can't get your nose over the ball like Jeffrey Boycott used to do and play a forward defensive and keep the very best bowlers out. You're frightened that you're going to lose your wicket in 10 balls time. So let's try and make as many runs as we can in the next 9. And that's not really sustainable, is it?
Well, it's not sustainable on these pitches, is it? I think the last person that, as you mentioned, did that was Pujara. And I look at what he did to Australia past series, especially in Australia, you know, just 300, you know, ball centuries, you know, where you think, oh, that's boring. But it's defense is an art that's slowly being forgotten in Test cricket. It is an art. It's a skill also. If you don't have a good defense, if you're an opening, if you're number 1, 2, 3, whatever, if you don't have a good defense, then what's the point of playing Test cricket?
I always think the innings I most admire are the ones where somebody really has to battle. And you see a player who you know is a decent player, but they come in and they're scratching around, they're getting beaten left, right, and centre. And I often, you know, when I'm commentating, I often say this, you know, he just needs to ride this period out, needs to play cautiously for the next 20 or 30 minutes. Cautiously doesn't mean leave everything, defend everything, but play sensibly, play within yourself. And then in sort of 40 minutes time, you'll have probably found your feet. That bowler will be off. You'll be into a new spell. The bowler will be older. All of a sudden, you'll be dictating terms yourself rather than the bowler dictating terms to you.
Yeah.
The kind of a lot of the players that are coming in now trying to do this this stuff aren't really showing enough patience to get through that 45-minute period.
Well, he'll learn very quick in Sri Lanka, won't he? Because you know, if he's going to go out, you know, and swing at everything, he's going to make looks very stupid. The great expert of that, as you just mentioned, a player that, you know, can grind in innings. Michael Clarke, the Australian batsman, was a great novice for that. I remember an innings, James, where he played in South Africa. And so there was an innings where Morne Morkel was just absolutely cleaning him up. I think Michael Clarke got a nasty blow to his elbow. He was in a lot of pain. You know, I remember that. I think that was one of the greatest innings of courage you'll ever see. And Morne Morkel and Dale Steyn were completely all over him, batted it out, survived, and made one of the best hundreds you can ever see. So I miss that. You know, I do miss that. Probably not when you're a bowler, James. That can be pretty frustrating. But you know, Pujara, Rohu Dravid, Ricky Ponting, the 100 he made at Edgbaston in the Ashes. You know, that's a great example of that as well. Where he just survived. You know, just again played sensibly but survived. So it's stuff like that. You are correct, where it is important to have those kind of innings, you know, but it is hard to also, like I said, it's hard to turn it off. It's hard to say stop. See that with Pant, Constance, Bazball, sometimes with Ben Duckett. We saw that a bit in New Zealand, where it's just hard to stop, James. So, but yeah, I do admire those innings as well.
Sorry about that. For some reason, my computer suddenly decided to turn itself off. But I'm back. Hello. The other things I thought with this Border Gavaskar Trophy, I mean, there was one little bit of controversy, slight controversy overnight with Sunil Gavaskar not happy that he wasn't invited to the presentation at the end, which I understand the thought process that you want to have an all Aussie platform. You want to kind of just go rah, 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 we're Australia with one. But if you're calling something the Border Gavaskar Trophy, I mean, we've just been to New Zealand with 2 deceased players in Graham Thorpe and Martin Crowe being the people named on the trophy there. You are basically naming the trophy after 2 legendary players. And by virtue of that, they're going to be getting older. Alan Border's not been in the best of health. These guys aren't going to be around forever. Whilst they're actually in the ground and they are actually alive and kicking and playing their part, have them both up there. What's wrong with Sonny Gavaskar shaking hands with Pat Cummins as well as Alan Border?
Well, if you watch the first morning of each Test match, there's different people carrying out the trophy together at the same time. I thought it was a little bit disrespectful. I can't. Being honest, I thought, what's the harm in having, as you said, a legend of Indian cricket, well, not just Indian cricket, but world cricket, Sonny Gavaskar. I just thought that was strange, and there's absolutely nothing wrong if you were to shake Pat Cummins' hand. It's been a feisty series. Some at times it's probably gone a little bit overboard. But if you're getting a legend like that, and Sonny Gavaskar has been doing a lot of commentary work for the local channels, so he's been around it. So every single test. So I didn't see the harm in it. And if he were to shake Pat Cummins' hand and say, you know what, good, well played, mate. You think, well, look, it's a happy ending. India lost, but all the tension that's been building, that's died down. We can both move on. It kind of leaves a sour note. It makes Cricket Australia, I think, look stupid. So I didn't see the harm in putting in Sonny there. So I don't know what their decision was over that. I don't know who made that decision, but I thought it was a little bit disrespectful, in my opinion. And I would say the same if it was in India and they did the same thing to Alan Border. So I thought it was just disrespectful.
I couldn't understand why. It's called the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Get the two of them up there, and whoever's lost, they're gracious. Whoever's won's punch in the air. What's the problem with that? I don't get it at all. And these guys aren't going to be around forever. Make the most of them whilst they're here. Let's have a look at the. These are the top end of the run scorers for the series. Travis Head's had a tremendous time, averaging 56 at the top end, and Jaiswal for India has been there. Main man Steve Smith coming back to some kind of form, but still averaging just 34.88. But as we've said, on green tops and in conditions that weren't necessarily the easiest to play at. Nitish Kumar Reddy for India has really cemented making a name for himself in the game. I thought he had a very good series. KL Rahul, I thought played well as well. Rishabh Pant, mainly around that 60, that 50 he got in the second innings, which was what an innings that was when he came out and just took it to the Australians. That another 20 minutes of him doing that could have made a big difference in that test if they got him out just at the right time. Marnus Labuschagne though struggling, isn't he? I think I just don't see it in him at the moment. He's had a couple of decent knocks in the series, but been shy of runs and has been struggling, as I say. But that's the top end of the batting there, Lucas. Standouts though, Travis Head and Jaiswal. Jaiswal just keeps going from strength to strength in alien conditions for him. Kind of coped with it at stages quite well. Got 2 ducks in the series as well, though. They either nipped him out early or he kind of booked in for bed and breakfast. And Travis Head the same.
Yeah. You look at the runs, the high scores there, 448 by Travis Head, like runs altogether. That's a pretty low standard, like, of batting. But because the pitches are what they are, you can't really blame him. Travis Head early, he looked like he was going to have that Steve Smith England series where he was going to hit 400s. He looked unbelievable. Then they pegged him back. Jaiswal, there was a lot of questions with Jaiswal coming into this series. Can he play with swing? He nicks off first over to Mitchell Starc. Doesn't look good. Makes 100. Then makes a couple of low scores. I think that the run out against Kohli, I think that was a big opportunity he missed. I think that he could have you make 200s in a series. You go from, that's good from 1 to great. So
I'll tell you what, though, he's going to be he is going to be around for a long time. I really like Jaiswal. I think he's tremendous in the bowling department. Yeah, we mentioned Jasprit right at the top there, 32 wickets, 13.06. Patty Cummins there, 25 wickets. You got Scotty Boland, only played the 3 tests and got 21 wickets there at 13.19. So him and Bumrah really the star of the averages, so to speak. Siraj was hit and miss. He's kind of their X factor bowler, isn't he? But at times the X disappeared. But when he
we lost James. So yeah, I'll continue going. I was surprised with Pat Cummins' stats because I thought Pat Cummins, apart from the Adelaide Test match, I thought he was a bit meh. I just, and I saw those stats, 25 at 21. You think, wow, there's no meh or average about that. So that really surprised me. I thought Stark was fantastic this series. I thought he was the best bowler outside of Boland that played all 5 Test matches. But then again, he's 18 at 28. So you think, well, what am I watching? But from the eye test, I just thought Mitchell Stark was fantastic all throughout the 4 tests. I think he was injured in the 5th test, which was very disappointing. I don't know why he played in that test match. I think it was just a waste. It could have been a lot worse. Playing a fatigue bowler, it just brings on more harm than good, especially when he faded in that second innings against Pant. That could have easily turned into a stress factor because he's bowled a lot of overs. Siraj, for me, I thought Siraj was from the 4th test and onwards, like test 1 to 4. I thought he was poor. I thought he was way too short. This test, I thought he was fantastic, mainly because he had the new ball. He was bowling more fuller. But yeah, the first 4 tests, I thought he was just absolutely horrible, in my opinion. Nathan Lyon, for me, not his series, is it? He was bowling on green tops. So James is back. I hope you heard all what I said, James, because I don't want to repeat it. But no, Nathan Lyon, I thought.
My laptop just completely. I don't know what's going on wrong with it today, but anyway. But you've gone through the bowling stats I would imagine at length there, as I've been gone. Let's finish off with the Border Gavaskar Trophy with India in transition. They are a team who are obviously really good, got some fantastic players, but they seem to be a side that, to be fair, both teams, I think, have some aging players who at some stage are going to have to go, and it's who is behind them, who is coming next off the rank. You've got Rohit Sharma sat out of the final test at the SCG. I thought that was a really kind of noble thing for him to do. He's a proud man. He knew he wasn't contributing. It remains to be seen whether he kicks on from that and comes back in, because we all know at his best he's incredible player. Virat Kohli didn't have the best series, had 1 century, but didn't have the best series by his standards. So there's a lot of chat in Indian circles that I've seen on social media about these two need to go. These two need to go now, and we need to bring in somebody else, Safas Khan or whatever. I wrestle with that a little bit because I can understand the thought process behind that. But I understand that these are seriously good players, and if they can come back to some kind of good form, then they are more than handy to have in the side. With Australia, you wonder who is next in line behind this back. Obviously Scotty Boland's come in. You've got Bo Webster come in who looks decent. Sam Constance, I think, could be decent if he actually just gets his brain sorted out. But who else is there? Because McSweeney had a go but couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He may come again, and hopefully he does. But there doesn't seem to be a huge queue of Australians waiting for their chance who are good enough to take that chance. So that both sides have got issues in a way in terms of who comes in next and where are they going with next squads, and India obviously coming to England. I'd love to see Rohit Sharma come, not because I want to see him come and do badly and England win. I want to see the best players playing at their best, and he's always been one of my favourites. But both sides have that, don't they, of what's kind of just around the corner.
Well, mainly with Australia, they're going to have another problem with the opening spot, because Khawaja, he had one of the worst series he's ever had. Khawaja, he's 30. He'll be 39 at the end of the year. He just turned 38. It just does not look the player he was, with all due respect. So there's another dilemma for the opening spot.
There you go. Screen there, Lucas. You've picked your squad to go to Sri Lanka, which is Australia's next destination. And there's a name at the very top of that list that is not Khawaja.
Yeah, that I've this might shock some people, but I'll have David Warner. Now, I think it's the right time, in my opinion, for Khawaja to go. You know, he's won the BGT. He's on. You know, he's fading very badly. You don't want him to have a bad tour away from home and then say, you know what, it's not working out. I'd rather, with all due respect to his game, because he is a fine batsman, I would like him to retire and say, you know what, I've done all I can. I've won it all. Let's move on. So then you're looking for another opener. So do you go down the McSweeney route, which I hate, which I don't ever want to see McSweeney open? He'll be a great number 3, number 4. Or do you go with someone with the Shield? Look at the Shield options. Bancroft can't make a run. Harris can't make a run. Can make a run, but can't seem to make it at Test level for some reason. Renshaw fallen off an absolute cliff. So what's a Band-Aid option? Band-Aid option is David Warner. You say to David Warner, right? All right, you got 2 tests. He's been playing Big Bash. He's been making runs. Now, David Warner, like James Anderson, they're not retired. They got forced. If you said, I think James Anderson a couple of months ago said, I would happily answer the call to play in the Ashes. You know, David Warner said the same thing before this debacle with Sam Constance, McSweeney. Warner said, I'm here, I'm available. So I would say, you got 2 tests. You're free to do whatever you want. Let Bancroft, let Renshaw, Harris, etc. Maybe Henry Hunt is a young batsman from South Australia who's made 300s this year, but also 3 ducks. Let them make runs, because unfortunately the Shield finishes after the Big Bash, which runs with the Sri Lankan series. I don't see any benefit of beating Bancroft or Renshaw back into that series and then dropping them again. Or if you bring back McSweeney and dropping it, there's no benefit from that. I think Warner's the ultimate Band-Aid option. And then you can say, right, Warner, thank you very much. You know, it's been done before. I think England used to do that with, I forgot his name, the spinner who came back from the Ashes a couple of years ago. Was it Mo Ali? Mo Ali or?
Oh, Moeen Ali came back. Yeah.
So it's not uncommon for players to retire and come back. I think that was a text message from Ben Stokes that said you're in. He just typed LOL. So I think Warner's the ultimate Band-Aid option. I don't want to see McSweeney play 2 tests. Have a horrible playing spin is very difficult, James. I just don't want to see a young player go into that environment, make low scores, and you drop for the second time in your young career. I don't want to see that. I don't think that benefits anybody.
What are you going to do if across those 2 test matches, David Warner scores 683 runs and he's the star of the show?
Well, if that's the case, then you say, well, you're playing the World Test Championship. So between the Ashes, right? They play 6 test matches. So from now until the Ashes, they play 6 test matches. 2 in Sri Lanka, the World Test Championship final. 3 against West Indies. I'm glad that's a 3-test series, James, by the way. I think that's great. If Warner can go as far as he can, so be it. But if he drops off, then you can bring someone from the Shield that's making runs. So I think Constance and Warner, geez, what a dynamic duo that would be, James. Labuschagne at 3, Smith at 4, Head, Webster, Carey. So you got 2 pace attack, Stark and Boland. Cummins will not be available this series because his wife maternity leave, which is fair enough. I don't blame him. No one should. You know, he wants to spend it with his newborn baby. That's fair enough. I don't think Hazelwood will play. He's coming from a calf strain, a major one. Don't see the benefit in risking him. So I'll go with Stark and Boland. The right-hand side is the reserves. Inglis, wicketkeeper. Hanscom's a great player with spin. Richard Shelley. Now, he's a young off-spinner in WA. You may not have heard about him. He's taken the most wickets as a spinner in the Sheffield Shield the last 2 years.
Lucas, but I was frightened to actually try and pronounce his name.
Yeah, Corey Roccicelli. He's got over 90 wickets on average of 30, so he's an attacking young off spinner. Kuhnemann is a leggy. The reason I put Kuhnemann in there because he's a different bowler to Richard Shelley's a finger spinner like Lyon and Todd Murphy. McSweeney, maybe as cover, and I've got a fast bowler cover. That's a Lance Morris, a potential also debut, who's a like for Stark. So if a pacer doesn't do well, they can bring in Morris. So I think that would be my ideal squad, my ideal 11. And Smith, of course, is going to be Smith will be captain in that series. That's confirmed. So I think that would be the right squad, in my opinion. Everyone's squad's different. to send, along with a couple of probably possible debuts. The bigger picture is, eventually you have to move on from Lyon. He can't go on forever. Now, I know Nathan Lyon has said, I'd like to make it back to the England series, which is 3 years away. It's a long way away. So I would still like to look at some spinners after Lyon, because I don't want to be in a position, James, where we go down the Shane Warne route where we tried 15 different spinners. I don't want to see that again, really. So then we found Nathan Lyon, who's being the one. So yeah,
this is where I have concerns about Australia far more than India, because India have got such a hotbed of cricket there. They will find replacements. There will be a new Ashwin. There will be a new batter to come in to replace Virat Kohli. They're just kind of waiting in their turn. And kind of the biggest task for Indian cricket is to funnel all of those hundreds of thousands of wannabe cricketers into the 11 shirts you've got at Test cricket. It may not happen immediately, but there will be players that come out and become the next Tendulkar, the next Kohli. That will just happen. Got no doubt about that whatsoever. With Australia, you've got Smith, you've got Lyon, you've got, even Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark are coming towards the twilight end of their career. Lyon is such a crucial part of this Australian team. He didn't play a huge part in this Border Gavaskar Trophy because the pitches weren't really made for him. But obviously, going to Sri Lanka, etc., he's going to be the big spinner. Who comes in to replace these guys for Australia? Because there doesn't seem to be a huge queue around the block to come in to be the next Steve Smith, the next Nathan Lyon.
The batting's a problem. The bowler, I can name you 50 different bowlers. I'll start with a few. Joel Paris from WA, good swing bowler, takes a lot of wickets. He's won the Sheffield.
He's been around a while, hasn't he?
Yeah, Joel Paris has been around for a while. He's won 3 Shields in a row for WA. He's been their main strike bowler. Lance Morris, I can't believe he hasn't played a Test match, again from WA. This is going to squash the I hate WA players here, James, because I'm mentioning mostly WA players here. But Lance Morris, I can't believe he hasn't played a Test. Cannot believe 145 plus bowler, huge in swinger, bit like Stark, but he's a right armer, not a left.
The Sri Lanka series would be a great way of throwing him in, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's why I named him in my squad. I think it'll be a great time. He should have played in that India match where Stark was injured, but they brought Stark back. Lance Morris was actually in that squad at that time, so I reckon that he should have played there. Fergus O'Neill, we've mentioned him last week. I'm not impressed with the comments about his pace, but he's taken 90 wickets at an average of 19 in the Shield. I don't care how quick he is. That's fantastic stats. So there's bowlers around, plenty of bowlers. The batsmen, that's a struggle. That's really a struggle, because the names I'm going to mention here have been recycled. Renshaw, Bancroft, Harris. Yeah. They're the run scorers. There's a young kid from WA, Jaden Goodwin, his father was Murray Goodwin, played for Zimbabwe. I've seen him live against South Australia in a day-night Sheffield Shield match just before the Indian series. He made 100 and he made a 60. He looks very impressive, very, very impressive. And he's one to watch for sure. Apart from that, you really struggle. Curtis Patterson, since coming from his injury, he's averaged over 100. He's made 90s, 3 90s and 100. He made that fantastic 100 on debut against Sri Lanka, again into his 30s. So the batting is a little bit stripped. Obviously McSweeney on there. Same with the keepers, James. Keepers, that's a little bit stripped as well. Apart from Kerry Inglis, I couldn't name a play outside of Inglis that could do a job. Maybe Pearson, but Pearson's, I think that he's well into his 30s now. So there's no young keepers going around either. So it is a concern because we see Khawaja not making runs, Labuschagne not making runs, and you don't want to be in a dilemma come the Ashes where players are not making runs because there's limited talent, and you don't want to use recycled players in an Ashes series or any series really, and then fail again. So that they do have to be careful with that. All-rounders, plenty of all-rounders. as we can see with it.
It's your
But,
hashtag.
yeah.
They're Constus fever, honestly.
I'll tell you what, James. If they've got Bazball in the Oxford Dictionary, how they even made the Oxford Dictionary, I don't know. Constus fever can be in the Oxford Dictionary as well, James.
Do you like the new red ball on the screen?
Yeah, I see. That looks
I've been
pretty
watching
good.
that talking, because obviously I've dozed off when you've been talking. I've been watching that red ball go around, and I need to find a way of getting the Cricket Badger logo on one side of the ball so it comes around on the ball. But anyway, I'll try and work that out. Go on.
Beggars can't be choosers, James. We'll get there eventually.
One thing to finish with, I was thinking last night watching Scotty Boland work his magic, taking a six for. I know you mentioned he's capable of bowling a quicker ball, but in the spell I was watching him take wickets, he was bowling at like 132 or something, but like low 80s in terms of miles an hour. And they're all your Sam Cooks and your Ben Codes and all the guys that are taking
Luke Fletcher's.
Yeah, taking wickets in the county championship and always get passed over because they're not quick enough, in inverted commas. Yeah. And I was thinking last night, if Scott Boland was English, born in Watford, playing for Middlesex, I bet England wouldn't pick him. They wouldn't pick him, and they certainly would not have him in the squad of 16 to tour Australia for the Ashes. Despite
really,
the fact, I know, because they wouldn't see him
even if they made green top pitches.
Well, no, because they wouldn't see him as being in the mould. Because we've had a lot of talk about pace bowlers, bouncy bowlers, bowlers that are going to be Sam Cook's brilliant. Jamie Porter for Essex, Chris Rushworth trundled in and took millions of wickets in the championship, nibbling it around and doing all sorts of kinds of things. Graham Onions was much under bowled for. I mean, he was a bit quicker to be fair, but much underused by England. An injury then curtailed it. As he made his mark, injury stopped him. But there's a lot of bowlers in the English county scene who are really good exponents of their art of swing and seam bowling. Who, I mean, Boland doesn't really swing it, does he much? He kind of just nibbles it off the pitch.
It seems it both ways, yeah.
But I'm convinced if Scotty Boland was in the English county championship, he would be overlooked and wouldn't be on the plane, because they're filling that plane with big, tall, strapping, faster bowlers, and that seems to be England's MO for this trip. So I'd be really. I mean, we'd never know the answer to that. That's me just hypothesising. But if we're not picking Sam Cook or Jamie Porter or anything for England, then I don't think Scott Boland necessarily makes the cut either. And we can see what he can do in Australia. And maybe. Yeah, there's always been a thought process, I think, with English fans or English selectors, that if you pick and this is going to sound horrendously rude to these people, and this isn't me talking, but a powder puff, dibbly dobbly, medium pace bowler who goes along at 80 miles an hour, and you take him to Australia, which is going to be cannon fodder on the hard bouncy tracks that you get out there. And yes, they might find it hard if we get the traditional surfaces that England have always faced in Australia. But if we get the pitches that we've just seen in this series, bowlers like that might have a real chance, I think, of doing a Scott Boland and having at least one match where they really fire. So I'd be interested to know what people think of that.
Yeah, I've like, instead of me interrupting you when you would say goodbye, I've got actually a question for you. What are England going to do with Ollie Pope now? He looked okay when he was keeping. Now, he's been keeping in New Zealand, and we've said you can't make judgment because it's one of the easiest places to keep. He's been keeping in the Big Bash. There was a stumping he made I think I made a comment about it in your chat. A stumping that was really, really good off a medium pacer. Again, it's 2020. You can't judge a keeper by that. But did they make him keeper in India just to see, and make Jamie Smith bat a professional batting position?
I mean, there is that routine with Jamie Smith. He's good enough as a batter to bat in the top 5 if he does that for Surrey. But I think after the impression that Jamie Smith made few mistakes with the gloves on either. Yeah. He's a good keeper. And it comes back to, we had this chat before, I think it comes back to they need to find a routine for 2 out of 3 players. Pope, Smith, and it was the other one we talked about. That's Crawley.
Crawley,
Because Roots are given, Brooks are given, Duckett's are given. They're all going to start in the Ashes, fitness permitting, and it's who fits. Ben Stokes is not going to miss out if he's fit. So there's 4 of your top 7. So you've only got 3 places left, and you've got a few contenders there for those places. But Pope doesn't go to 3. Oh, sorry, it was Jacob Bethel, wasn't it?
Jacob Bethel. Yeah, he looked good as well. Pope looked good at 6 as well when he stayed there. So it's a dilemma.
Jacob Bethel seems to be a better version of Sam Constas, in that he's come in and he's actually thought about how he's going to play, rather than just. Sam Constas looks like he's been shooting up some weird and wonderful drug and gone out there on acid or something. Just like he's playing some kind of it's like he's playing on the PlayStation rather than playing in real life.
Brent also has a better temperament as well than Sam Constas.
Yes, a drugs test Sam Constas. No, I'm joking. But the Jacob Bethel has come in, and I was a little bit worried about Jacob Bethel. As you know, when we first looked at the Jacob Bethel coming into the England side, I was thinking asking him to bat 3 was unfair. He's never batted that high in his life. Is he ready? Blah 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 blah. I knew he was potential. Banks of potential, but you can only judge from what you've seen so far. And whenever he's put an England shirt on, he looks like he's born to wear it. So, do you drop Jacob Bethel so that Ollie Pope can go back to number 3? Do you drop Jamie Smith or not let Jamie Smith back into that side so that Ollie Pope could be shoehorned in the middle order? They love Ollie Pope. He's vice captain. They seem to have this attraction to Ollie Pope and Zach Crawley that some people can't understand. I think Zach Crawley is a lucky boy. I think he's played a lot more Test matches than he should have done. He's had some fantastic days out where he's looked brilliant, but they tend to be on hard surfaces that roads basically. When he's on a road, Zach Crawley is brilliant. If you turn up in the Ashes, England turn up in the Ashes, and they serve up the pitches that we've had against in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, Zach Crawley will struggle to buy a run. Because he's just not good enough. He's not good enough defensively against the moving ball to keep that ball out. So if we have an Ashes series where they go down the Border Gavaskar Trophy route, then I fear for Zach Crawley. And they seem to, England seem to be putting a lot of stock in the fact that Zach Crawley's tall, plays bounce well, likes the ball coming onto the bat, so therefore the Ashes are going to be perfect for him. Not if it's like the pitches we've just seen. It's not.
Well, speaking of pitches, would England be tempted to go down the Australian route, knowing how India played on those green tops? Would they think, we'll play on green tops, we'll get some experience, and we'll roll India 5-0? Would they be tempted to do that in any test?
England will serve up the same pitches that England always serve up. A lot of it's down to the weather. Also, a lot of it is down to a desire to keep pitches, try and get test matches into days 4 and 5 so that you can make money. Money's never far away from ECB's thought process. But I don't think I'd want to face Jasprit Bumrah on a green top if I'm Zach Crawley. You won't be facing him for very long, Zach, I don't think. And if Zach Crawley has a terrible summer, I mean, England, if they've got any sense, McCullum and Stokes and co will have been watching the Border Gavaskar Trophy, looking at the pitches that Australia have been playing there, and they're going to have to at some stage make an assessment on when they pick the squad for the Ashes. What will Australia do? Will Australia revert back to the traditional big, bouncy, big run scoring tracks that then turn to spin later on, or will they go down the same route as the Border Gavaskar Trophy?
That's a very good point, James. Because if Australia, if Pat Cummins, media says, I'm happy with the pitches you got, then you can't pick the same full tall bowlers. You're gonna have to go back to traditional seam swing bowlers like an Atkinson or like Jimmy Anderson. Maybe you have to bring back Jimmy Anderson if they're going to play those pitches. So you can't pick length bowlers on those green top pitches. So you got a good point there.
If you're Jimmy Anderson and you've been forced to retire, and then all of a sudden you see the pitch is served up as they've done in the bug, you'd be thinking, what on earth have they retired me for? Because it'd be really good on those tracks. You know, Jimmy Anderson running in on those surfaces would be absolute. You know, but probably if we're honest, his time has gone, isn't it? They're gonna be moving on. But you know, Matty Potts probably suddenly comes into the equation because Matty Potts can move the ball about and you know, might be more potent than I don't know, somebody else that's maybe a bit bigger and kind of bangs it in. And so, I mean, we haven't mentioned Josh Hull for ages, who was put into England's team last summer and then got injured, so hasn't played since. But they seem to have earmarked him as a left arm, tall, fast bowler that can come in and bang it in, and seem to be picking these guys purely for Australia. And yet, will they be great on the pitches that we've just seen? Will they be any better than a Matty Potts? Probably, possibly not. But anyway, we will see, Lucas. We will see. And we'll probably round off there because I think we've covered most bases. But Umar Khan, hello to you. He says, are you watching Pakistan? This is South Africa's test series, says Umar. I've watched a little bit, Umar. I have to be honest, I've not been glued to every single second of it. I've been seeing South Africa racking up a huge score in recent times. Rickleton got a double ton, didn't he, Lucas?
Yeah, he made it 250. They've just blown Pakistan away. I fear, just quickly off, I fear for South Africa in the World Test Championship. Now, I think it's up to the England curators. I don't like that. I think if you finish on top, you can have whatever pitch you want. And if it was up to South Africa, I think they'd probably want a green top. But they won't get that. And I feel if they get a flat wicket, I think Australia is going to be all over them in 3 days. They haven't really beat anybody to note in their cycle. They've almost had the
I think it's really unfair, kind of Michael Vaughan's viewpoint. I mean, you kind of just said it as an aside there, but the kind of Michael Vaughan, they've beaten nobody. Why are they in the World Test Championship? Tell you why they're not in the World Test Championship. I tweeted this the other day. They're not in the World Test Championship because South Africa don't get the A-list series. You've got India, Australia, England playing each other for 5 test matches, and everything, as we've just been talking about, everything in England, Australia's psyche and India's psyche revolve around the next time they're going to be playing England or the next time they're going to be playing Australia, etc. South Africa is shoehorned in somewhere along the lines to just give them a series, probably a 3-match series somewhere, or 2-match probably in some cases. So you can only beat who's put in front of you. If you're only able to play the teams that South Africa, and they've beaten them, and they're in the World Test Championship. It's not South Africa's fault. They've beaten the teams they've played, and they deserve to be in the World Test Championship final with the World Test Championship final with the World Test Championship shaped the way it currently is. We all know the World Test Championship is shaped wrongly. It's not. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It's not fit for purpose. I like the idea of the World Test Championship and giving Test cricket a framework to operate in, but teams need to play each other, and that's why I keep saying rather than having it over a 2-year cycle. ICC do everything. The reason we've got this Champions Trophy shoehorned in coming up. Why? We've got T20 World Cups biannually. We've got the 50 over World Cup every 4 years. We've got plenty of space for Test cricket and stuff. Why do we need a Champions Trophy? What does it mean? Does whoever wins the Champions Trophy suddenly think, we're better than we were before? Probably not. It's a fairly meaningless trophy. It's not. It won't be in the few weeks we play it because I'll be watching it all the time. But
well, you will. It won't get me up at 4 a.m. But you can do that, James.
We don't need the Champions Trophy. Allow us to have a bit of time off or do something else. But the reason we have a World Test Championship final every 2 years is that we can have a global final every 2 years. Have a global final every 4 years. The cycle, the natural cycle of Test cricket is a 4-year cycle. England, Australia play each other home and away once in 4 years. England, India play each other once every 4 years, home and away, etc., etc. 4-year cycle is the natural cycle of Test cricket. So build the World Test Championship cycle around that cycle. Have a World Test Championship final once every 4 years, and in the intervening period, in that 4 years, you've got a much more chance of everybody actually playing each other at some stage. And if it is if it is a 5-test series that you're playing, Just count the first three, or the
Yeah.
actually, I keep saying the first three. Somebody came up with a really good point on X the other day. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the person that said this. Make it the last three, and I actually like this. Make it the last three because it gives those last three tests some kind of meaning, even if the series is dead after 3 matches. I get that, but the World Test Championship at the moment isn't right. It can be better, but in the current situation, South Africa have done all they can do.
And I agree with you. It's not their fault. They can only play who they bet. And that's probably why. I'm not going to get into debate with this conversation another day, so I'll wrap this up. I think that's why you need 2 tiers with promotion and relegation. So I fear for South Africa in that front because I think Australia are far better than the. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
You're never going to get 2 tiers.
Yeah. I know why. Yeah.
There's 3 teams with all the money that will refuse to get relegated.
Well, Australia are going to have that problem with Bangladesh in 2 years' time, James. They're going to have a huge problem with that. So that's interesting to see where that goes because that's a 2-test series. So that's going to be very interesting to see where they go with that because crowds in Australia have been absolutely fantastic, just breaking records left, right, and centre in stadiums. So Test match cricket in Australia is buzzing, and you have the Ashes, and then New Zealand, then you have a load of Bangladesh. I'm not sure how that's going to go.
Well, it's nice to see Bangladesh get the opportunity to play in that slot, though, isn't it? So
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think,
There was a graphic on Twitter this morning where it showed Australia's really good record. The last time they've played each of the major nations, and it was 2-2 against England, blah 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 blah, win, draw, win, all the way down. But haven't been beaten by anybody in the last times they've played anybody, which is well played, Australia. The last time they played Bangladesh was something like about 2017. They've never played Afghanistan. They've never played Ireland. They've never played. Who was the other one? I can't remember. Zimbabwe. That's not good for Test cricket. We're giving Ireland Test status. We're giving all of these teams a bit of a leg up. They get all excited that they've got Test status. We're going to be Test players, hurrah, hurrah! And then you play 9 times in the next 6 years or something like that. We need to get a situation where we get a 4-year Test cycle. There isn't the pressure to play everybody as much as we do, and it allows. You come up with good points about if you're touring England, play Ireland. If you're touring South Africa, play Zimbabwe. I like that. But we need to get these smaller nations into a slightly playing a little. I mean, it doesn't have to be every single week, but playing a little bit more than they are doing, because the only way they're going to improve is by playing.
We haven't mentioned this, but Zimbabwe are playing a 2-test series against Afghanistan. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Yet you see the pitch in the first Test match, which you think, what's the point of that? But I've been keeping my eye on that series. I think that's a great series. Just the pitch in the first Test was a huge problem. But I want Afghanistan, I want Zimbabwe involved in these Test matches.
The point of that first Test track was that it means that a few of those players, when they come to England to play a one-off Test match, they'll have an average of 60 something. You'd be thinking, these guys are good. They played one match on the back of an ironing board, which basically was as flat as a pancake. Anyway, but there is lots to talk about. We're going to talk about all of that in 2025 and beyond, I'm sure. But Lucas, for now, thank you very much for joining me. It's been good to see you.
Good to see you too, James, and Happy New Year and Happy 2025 for the cricket badgers out there.
Thanks to Lucas. Thanks to you, everybody out there, for watching and listening. Thanks to manscaped.com for their support of the Cricket Badger podcast. We will see you again, my dear badgers, very soon indeed. Have a good day, everybody.